Hello my friends, welcome back to another tutorial. I hope you're all keeping very well out there and painting wonderful artwork. This week on YouTube I want to paint a beautiful Irish landscape. It's from Connemara in County Galway. Beautiful traditional Irish landscape, nice and colourful, just beautiful colours in Irish landscapes. There really is. So I've a lovely canvas here, 20 by 16, nice big canvas, big enough, and we're going to paint a beautiful Irish landscape, but I'm going to keep it simple, and let's see if we can create very effective, very eye-catching, colourful landscape with just a few simple techniques. And I'm probably going to use this one brush for most of the painting, so this and maybe a small pointy brush for detail. So let's see if we can create a lovely painting with just one, maybe two brushes and a handful of colours. You don't have to go to a huge expense and use lots and lots of expensive brushes. These brushes I use are just very basic, cheap, synthetic, soft brushes. They're all flats. I only use flats. There's no need to go to a huge expense for painting. When I first started painting, I was under this assumption that you have to buy the best quality materials, and you know, if you buy the expensive brushes you will get the best paintings. That's not true. It's not true at all. I've always used very cheap basic brushes. It's about learning the technique. You can paint anything with any kind of a brush, a cheap brush, anything you like. It's about learning the technique and how best to use that brush. Because I have in the past purchased very expensive brushes, really expensive brushes, and to be honest, I found no difference whatsoever. They actually didn't even last as long as the cheap brushes. They got crudted up with paint, they got hard, they kind of lost their strength, and their spring kind of disappeared. The ferrules here, they came loose, the hair started falling out, and I then bought a set of cheap brushes, and I couldn't believe the difference. They last twice, maybe 4 times as long sometimes. This brush is just a basic brush I bought in set, a cheap set of brushes. It's kind of a student quality, we'll say, brush set. I have this brush about 6 months and it's still perfect. Look at that, it's absolutely perfect. Look how soft that is. It hasn't lost its shape, it hasn't worn down. It's nice and strong and rigid, you know. Don't go buying expensive materials. The same goes for canvas. You don't have to buy expensive canvas. Yes, it's a more durable canvas and is probably slightly nicer to work on because you feel that quality, but a basic budget canvas will do just as well. I just buy budget canvases for tutorials. If I'm doing a big commission, I'll buy an expensive canvas, but for tutorials and for basic landscape painting in general, I purchase cheap basic canvas panels or stretched canvas framed, and just give them one coat of undercoat, a simple watered down household undercoat paint that you can buy in any DIY store. Just make it nice and thin and watery, give it a coat of that, and it's perfect. It's pretty much the same as gesso. Gesso, again, it's very expensive. I use white household undercoat, tinned with water, and it might last me 12 months, a small tin. So, you know, and it works fine, it's absolutely fine. And you'll see in a moment, the paint goes on lovely and smooth. So that's it. Just, you know, don't go spending lots of money on expensive materials. You really don't. That's, I think, a big misconception out there. If you're a more advanced and professional artist and you can afford to buy expensive brushes and canvases and paints, that's great. But for the majority of people, I think, you know, trying to save as much as you can is important. Especially for me, it's important, you know. I have a lot of stuff. So I just use simple, cheap brushes, okay? Let's go and paint a beautiful painting and see what we can do with 1 or 2 brushes. And let's see if we can create this beautiful Irish landscape. Don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. Alright everyone, here we go. This is my canvas and my palette. I did a quick sketch and there's a reference photograph. Now isn't that just gorgeous? It's simple but beautiful, impactful colours. Lovely blues in the mountains, simple blue sky, and a little bit of detail down here. Very complementary colours, because the warmth of the grass and the land down here complement the warmth in the hills in the distance. So it's a beautiful painting. It's going to turn out quite nice, I think. I'll tell you what colours I have. Titanium white, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow, magenta, phthalo blue. I have cerulean cobalt. That's a new one. Burnt umber, burnt sienna, and lamp black. Now, here we go. I have thinners in a jar, turpentine and linseed oil mixed in, just a little linseed oil. What I'm going to do is give the sky a coat of simple linseed oil. Now, this is linseed oil varnish. It's for used for timber and stuff like that, but it's an artist's primer as well. You can use this just instead of liquid clear if you like. I'm just going to give the sky a very quick coat of all of this. It's a very thin coat. You don't have to go crazy with too much. Just a little thin layer is all you need. And that just helps the paint flow around easily. That's all. That's all it's for. Because sometimes I find, especially when I'm painting a big sky like this, I find it can start to dry in certain spots quicker. So this just gives you time to do all the blending and everything else. Let's go. Let's start the sky. I'm going to take this large brush. So 1.5, I don't know what that equates to in 1.5 inches. I don't know. Probably, I don't know, looking at it, probably a size 12 or something. Just a large flat. Okay. I want to just dampen that and dry it. Let's go into some blues. Let's take some titanium white first. You couldn't use just blue on this on its own, because those blues are so luminous. They're very translucent. So you need white as a thickener. Okay, I always use white just as a thickener to thicken the paint, to make it cover properly, basically. Then I go into some phthalo blue. Then I'm going to go into some cobalt cerulean. And that's a beautiful colour for landscapes and seascapes especially. It's just a very natural kind of a greeny blue. And this sky has a hint of a greeny blue in it as well. So let's mix up a nice mix of that, nice rich blue. Let's start up here. You see now how that linseed oil helps the paint really flow along. A bit more of the cerulean. You see how it just really flows along nicely. You see what I mean? It really helps. It really helps you. You know, you don't have to struggle with the canvas, you know. Normally you're kind of like this, you're scrubbing the paint into the canvas. With the linseed oil, just that thin layer, it just really helps the paint. Look, it just glides along. Comes off the brush lovely and it glides along. Now this is a very thin layer I'm putting on. I will thicken it as I go. So I just kind of want to get the early stages of colour on, if you like. Now I'm just making sure, colour wise, that you can see everything okay there. I'm just going to check the camera for a moment. So let's keep going. Cerulean, little phthalo, plenty of white. Now I will add a tiny touch of thinners into this, just to thin this, because when you add white, the white makes it very thick and very opaque. So a little thinners is needed. So let's keep going. I'm just going to keep kind of adding to this now, just to get it slightly thicker, to cover the canvas really well. And as I come down, I'm going to start taking hints of a Naples yellow as well. Because as you can see, as it comes down, it kind of has this sort of bright greeny glow going on further down the canvas as you go down further. So more white, a little touch of Naples yellow. Let's try that. Yeah, that's not bad. I like that. I'll go with that for now. Let's soften this all across. And that linseed oil just really helps. You see how that really helps just move the paint around and allows you to soften lovely, give it a beautiful gradient from top to bottom. I'm just cleaning my brush quickly, and I'm going to go right into some white, a little bit of thinners, and some Naples yellow. It has a very bright sky down the bottom down here, doesn't it? The Naples yellow, it will mix with the bit of blue that I have in the brush already. So you get this lovely bright greeny, turquoisey shade. Just at the base of the sky down there. Let's soften it up. And go across there nice and gently. I'm going to bring that colour across to the other side as well. So more white, more Naples yellow. A bit thicker to cover the colour, okay? You see what I mean? Now how about that? I think that's a nice, simple sky. We could maybe, if you want, look, we could just take a little bit of white and add a little bit of white just down at the very bottom. Just to really brighten it. And over here as well, just behind those mountains. Let's just brighten it a nice little bit over there. Now, soften it up all the way. And that's fine. We are done with our sky. Nice simple sky, nothing complicated. Let's move on to the hills. I'm going to start with a nice rich mauve for the hills, okay? Now we could try, let's just try, because I'm curious. I haven't tried this before. Let's try Cerulean Cobalt with a little magenta. I think that's going to give us a nice, deep, warm mauve. Let's have a look. Yeah, it's not bad. It's a little bit blue, but we can just add a little bit more magenta to it. Now this is where we start having fun with colours. Okay? Now a bit more pink in that. That's, I think, a little better. There we go. Let's put in the mountains. I'm not copying it exactly. This is just, I'm only taking a slight look at the photograph. Let's put a bit of white in there, just to thicken it up. The white, a little bit of phthalo as well, look. The white always thickens it up. You see the way the colours are very translucent, you can see right through the canvas. Well, you want to kind of cover that with thicker paint, you see what I mean? I don't want to see the kind of the grain of the canvas showing through. And you can see the difference immediately where I didn't use linseed oil. You see how the brush is kind of dragging across. You see it's dragging along the canvas and it's not really covering the canvas very well. So that's why I was saying in the sky, the linseed oil, especially for a big area, it's fantastic for that. It just makes life so much easier. Now I'm going Phaylo blue, a little bit of magenta and a touch of burnt umber. That's going to give us beautiful, again, a nice deep colour. I want to fill this in, down like that, and you can see it's just such a difference when I'm not using linseed oil. It's more difficult to get the colour to cover the canvas. It's a lot more difficult. Now, there we go. Let's move out to the very distant ones over here. I'm simply going to take a bit of white into that mix, a little bit of magenta, and even with that light pinky kind of a shade, let's just pop these in. Again, a very rough suggestion, look. Maybe a bit of the cerulean. That'll give us some nice distance and depth. And bring this down. You can see how thin my layers are. They're really thin. I'm using just very thin layers of paint. Okay, I'm going to take some white and pop a little bit of white into the hills over here, just to create some highlights. Give a little bit of distance and a bit of depth to those. You see what I mean? Just a little bit, that's all. And I'm then going to start darkening a little bit here. So, let's take some Phaylo blue, magenta again, and some burnt umber. This is a warm, kind of a plummy shade now that I'm using here, okay? I just want to kind of get the dark side of the mountain. I want to fill in the dark side of the mountain with this plum, warm kind of a plum first. Okay? Just go on half of the dark side of the mountain and then come down and let's leave it disappear into those distant hills. And that's why I love using wet in wet. That's the fantastic thing about painting wet into wet with oils. You can just get some beautiful soft shades blending together. And I'm going to just then start adding a bit more of a purple to the bottom, a bit more blue, look. Just to the bottom section and kind of soften it up at an angle. Take our time, you know, we're not painting mountains like this. Just take our time in it. Try and have a bit of fun with the whole thing. Now I am going to also brighten down here. I'm going to brighten the highlights. What I mean by that, or sorry, brighten the shadows. What I mean by that is, let's take some phthalo blue and some white, okay? Lots of phthalo blue and a touch of magenta. A little bit of white in there. I'm going to kind of highlight the shaded areas ever so slightly with a light kind of a blue, particularly down towards the bottom. This just gives the impression of light hitting the mountains. You see what I mean? It gives you that little bit of an impression. Then I'm going to go just at the very top edge, a bit of black, a little bit of magenta and a touch of blue. I'm going to just go nice and dark on these lines just up here, look. There we are. Okay, now we're on to the bright side. Let's clean this brush again. Just dip it in some turpentine and leave a tissue soak off the colour, look. That's how to clean your brushes with oils. So most of it is gone. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to put a nice warm colour up here. I'm going to take Naples yellow, a little bit of white and a little touch of magenta. So we're going for a kind of a pinky, almost like a salmon shade. So if you eat salmon, I don't eat salmon fish myself, but that kind of a colour, that pinky, that warm kind of a pinky colour, that's what you want. Let's go up and pop this on and then just kind of wiggle it down, look, like that. And then we just kind of soften it into that darker side, look. Just kind of switch the brush, flick it, move it different ways. Just to kind of soften it together, but at the same time you can see about creating direction with the colour. You see what I mean? Let's go again. Let's put a little bit over here. Just for a bit of fun, come on. There's not that much there, but let's just make it our own. Let's have a bit of fun, the whole thing. Put a bit here, a bit there. You know, it's our painting. We can do with it as we please. And there's some lovely highlights on the hill. Now I'm going to go a step further, take some Naples yellow, bit of white, and again, tiny touch of magenta. This is slightly brighter shade. And just go up slightly brighter here and there. And just very gently create just some nice little highlights here and there. I'm going to leave it at that, my friends. Our hill and our sky is finished. We have a nice dark section over here. Let's get that in. Looking at that, I'm going to say black, a little bit of cerulean, little touch of cadmium yellow, and a touch of burnt sienna. It's like a dark greeny shade. Let's put a touch of Naples yellow in there as well. So it's a kind of a grey green shade. For me, this is all about just looking at a photograph or looking at a scene. Even if you're doing plein air, out in the open, it's simply just kind of looking at the colours and distinguishing what colours you see. So what colours can you see there? Is it a browny grey? Is it a reddy brown? It's about distinguishing those different shades and just put those shades into your painting. Let's clean the brush again. We have a nice hint of siennas over in the distance. Burnt sienna, little Naples yellow, touch of magenta. I see nice warm pinky shades over there in the distance. Off in the distant hill, softening it through the hill. Leave it come up like this, look, soften it away. That's a nice little bit of warmth over there. Okay. Then we're just going step by step now all the way through the painting. Step by step. Look at the colours, look at what you can see, and go from there. I'll clean the brush again, and we have a beautiful blue water, don't we? Let's get phthalo blue, a little of that cerulean, and some white. I'm just going to paint in the water first, and we'll add some details afterwards, okay? Let's just put in that nice rich blue water we have, maybe a bit more phthalo. There's our water. Now we can just take a bit of white and just pop a little bit of white through there as well if you like, just to give it, you know, a little bit of something. We can take a bit of phthalo blue on its own as well if you like, and add a hint of a rich blue in there. All these little colours make a difference. Now with the same brush, I'm taking a touch of this dark colour, touch of burnt umber perhaps, and off in the distance you can see on the left hand side we have what looks like a bit of land or something just cutting off the mountain from the water. It's just like a little bit of land. It's something over there. There's something there. We know there's something there. And then we also have something in the centre of our lake, don't we? I can't really see what that is, only it just looks like mounds of earth or something, but let's just put them in anyway. Grab a bit of sienna. It's just a feature in the landscape. It's very difficult to know what they are, but they're there. So we will put them in. And I'm going to grab a small pointy brush, take some black, and just put a little bit of black on the backs of these, where there's shade. A little bit of black is fine, I think. That should be all we need. It's very difficult to tell what they are. Let's take a bit of Naples yellow with sienna. Pop a little bit of that on the front. Are there mounds of earth, little bushes, trees or something like that growing out of the water? I don't know. I can't really tell. So it's probably easier just to make a little suggestion of them. Let's take a bit of white and just set those down in the water. And there we are. I think we're okay with that for now. I don't think we need to go any further with any other details. Maybe just one over here, just a little bit of darkness, suggest a bit of land over there. But otherwise, I think we're fairly good. I'm going to darken here slightly. Bit of black, bit of phthalo blue. I'm going to darken up here. Just separate that a little bit more. There we go. I think that's a little better. So now we're really going along nicely, aren't we? We're down to our foreground. Just going to pop a little bit of light in over here, just here and there. Give it a little bit of texture. Could be rows of trees or anything like that. Just a little bit of something in there. You understand what I mean? Okay. We're down to all this area. Now I am going to put some linseed oil on this because I feel, let me just straighten the camera ever so slightly, look, just like that, just a little bit. I feel this is a big area and I want to just cover all of this very quickly just to get a base layer or an undercoat on. So come on, let's just cover all of this very thin layer of linseed oil. That just makes life a heck of a lot easier, doesn't it? Right, big brush is at the ready. Let's get lots of burnt sienna, a little bit of burnt umber, and I think I'll start with maybe just take a touch of Naples yellow as well, just to make it slightly thicker. And yes, I'm going to start with that colour. I'm going to just go along with that colour, fill in all of this. That gives us a really nice base coat. You see how thin this is, it's almost watery. That's because of the linseed oil. Bit of burnt umber. I find it much easier to paint on a canvas which already has colour. Do you know, when you're painting like this, I find it easier to have a base colour on the canvas already. It really helps you distinguish colours and get your tones and your hues just right. It just makes such a difference, it really does. So now we have our base colours in, we can start adding thicker colour to this. Let's get some burnt sienna and Naples yellow. And I'm going to just simply start over here by dabbing that colour on. Dab, 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 like that. So we're creating a grassy effect. Take a bit of burnt umber and come over this side and do the very same thing. Dab, 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 dab. This is all the early stages now. Just remember, it's the beginning of creating texture. Okay? Now I took a little bit of magenta there as well. Let's just go along. And just keep dabbing with your brush all the way down. Dab, 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 dab. You can use a fan brush for this as well. It would make a very nice way of doing all of this. Now as it comes down further, we can start getting thicker with our brush strokes. Look, I'm going to start flicking it upwards. And that's really starting to cover much, much easier, isn't it? I'm just picking up now a mixture of all the different shades I have on my palette. A bit of this and a bit of that. Just making it very random and very different. That's all. Okay. we're going very, very nicely. Let's try a bit of burnt sienna and black and let's go along. Just where it meets the road. Put a little darkness in there. And look, you can be just very loose with all of this. Okay? Don't be too constricted, and that's why I was saying using a big brush like this for most of your painting. It just encourages you to be loose and not to think too much about what you're doing. You see what I mean? I'm just kind of picking up colours and having me get fun. Just not taking it too seriously, seeing what happens. Sometimes in painting, most of what you paint, sometimes you have a happy accident. Sometimes that can be the best part of any painting. You can have a happy accident and you think to yourself, well, I wasn't expecting that, but it actually looks quite nice. And that's what I love about painting loosely like this, especially with a big brush, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's what it's all about, being unpredictable in your painting and just allowing your brush to do different things and whatnot. Now we have a bit of a ditch here with some rocks and all of that. I'm just going to come along here and just pop a little bit of darkness in, just to, you know, give the impression of there's a dark patch of a ditch coming across there. Let's put a little bit along here, you know, and especially the direction of your brush is very important, how you kind of hold your brush. I'm putting a bit of magenta in here and there, just for a bit of warmth. Already, it's coming on quite nice, isn't it? You can see we're starting to get the shapes that we want. Now I'm going to come over here and just gently flick up, start off small and get bigger and bigger, just to kind of sit that down on the side of the road. And remember, don't forget to kind of flick your brush around in different directions. That's what it's all about. Flick it around in different ways. Look, go around in circles, flick it left like that, flick it right, and that just makes it all that more interesting. Got a bit of burnt umber up here, and I generally, when I'm doing this, I generally like to start with the darker colours and then put in my lighter shades last. That's the way I kind of work. Let me just put a little bit of burnt umber over here as well, and a little bit over here. As you can see, I'm just kind of very loosely just going around and putting little dabs of colour here and there. Now my friends, I'm going to call this part 1 finished. I don't want to rush it for you too much. We have a lot to do with the road and the ditch and the fence posts, and we still have a bit of work to do on all of this as well. So I'm going to call that part 1 finished. And I will move on. To part 2 right away. So don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. Thank you for joining me. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Help the channel. Let's grow the channel and help as many people as we can. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.